Hey guys, it's Matt. You're going to love this. Thanks to Eva for bringing this to my attention. Apparently, this has always been part of history. I even called Greg. I had never heard of this. I called Greg, and Greg's like, yeah, I remember hearing something about that. I'm not saying it's a reality shift. I'm not going out there. I'm not saying it's a Mandela effect. Apparently, it's always been part of history. I just missed it. But what I'm saying, what Gus is saying, is it's the most fakest story inserted into history I've almost ever heard. This is ridiculous. What are you saying, Mr. Presenter, that all these history websites are lying to us? Well, yeah, basically. I don't know what else to tell you. They're not lying. They got it from a reputable source that initially lied somewhere up the river. This is ridiculous. So for those that don't know what this is, just by the double picture here in the headline, let me explain this to you. How Edwin Booth saved Robert Todd Lincoln's life. Okay. Robert Todd Lincoln is Abraham Lincoln's eldest son. Okay. Edwin Booth is the much more famous older brother to John Wilkes Booth, who most people have heard of a few times in their life regarding to Abraham Lincoln in the Ford Theater. But this guy is his older brother, actor, much, much more famous. The story is that the train, everybody's trying to crowd onto this train, and Robert Todd Lincoln he was pushed up against the train. The train had to move up 10 feet or something. He fell under the train, or was going to be crushed or killed or whatever, and somebody reached down, grabbed him by the collar, and pulled him up from the tracks before he was decapitated or something. And it turned out it was Edwin Booth, the older brother of John Wilkes Booth. So Booth, here's the more famous story is Booth killed Lincoln, but in this case, Booth saved Lincoln. Right. Yeah. Is anybody, but what are you saying, Mr. Presenter, who's presenting this YouTube channel, Quantum of Consciousness? I'm saying I don't care how many history websites and history books reflect this. I don't believe it for a second. It's as fake as John Bobbitt's pornography career. I don't buy it. And speaking of fake as, remember in, what was it, The Christmas Carol with George C. Scott, with his, what was his nephew or something? They played similes. Remember, he was good at similes. So somebody says tight as, and somebody yells out, "Oh, a drum, tight as a drum." And so they play similes. We need, in the comment section, we need to do fake as, because just saying if a historical event is as fake as a John Bobbitt pornography career, that's not good enough. I need more fake as blanks to come back at you with in future videos. And for those that don't know what I'm talking about, that was John Bobbitt was the guy that, what did she do? Lorena, her name was, or something. She cut the willy off, but that wasn't the end of it. Somehow she put it in her purse or something, was driving down the road, and she flung it out the window. Was later recovered and sewn back on, of which she had a very prolific pornography career. I don't buy that story for 1 second either, and I'm likely you don't either. But anyway, so Edwin Booth, so a Booth saved Lincoln, a different Lincoln, but then a Booth killed Lincoln. Yeah, right. Okay. Now, guys, whenever this happens and it smells to be faux, to put it mildly, I just always get the sense that as soon as I start the research, something will pop out, or the ridiculous nature of it will just compile on top of itself exponentially. And what do you think happened here? I'll give you 3 guesses, but you're only going to need one. The first thing that happened as I scanned down here, blah, 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 Robert Todd Lincoln was the eldest son of Abraham and Mary Lincoln, the 17-year-old Harvard student when the Civil War began, blah, 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 blah. And you go down here and you go, Edwin Booth, born 1833. Oh, hey, there it is again, but that's not enough to get me excited. 1833 was the second oldest of Junius Brutus Booth. I'm thinking, wait a second. So Edwin Booth, the oldest son of Junius Brutus Booth. I'm like, okay, why is the name Brutus in there? Brutus, the most famous conspirator associated with Julius Caesar's death. What are the chances of that? So a quick search reveals that, well, that's the article I want to look at in a second. Here's Brutus. He's just known as Brutus, who there were several conspirators regarding all the fake history about the Roman Empire. We'll just go with it as real for now. Just called Brutus, but his real name is Marcus Junius Brutus. So the guy that killed Julius Caesar, Marcus Junius Brutus. And then we go over here, and the father of Edwin Booth and John Wilkes Booth is Junius Brutus. Junius Brutus Booth. Right. Yeah, Matt, you conspiracy people with your coincidences and your latching on to your, I'm going to say it right this time, your apophenia. Latching on to your apophenia. Just call it alpophenia. Better than aphophenia. You latching on to your apophenia. That means seeing connections and coincidence where they are not. Yeah, Junius Brutus. Junius Brutus. Okay. Yeah. What are the chances, right? What are the chances? So if Edwin Booth, born 1833, was second, then John Wilkes Booth was son of Brutus, Junius Brutus. Give me a break. This reality is an absolute joke. The old man from Moonstruck. Somebody tell a joke. This is an absolute joke. Well, what are you saying, man? It didn't happen? We don't know. This reality is so bizarre. It is so gone. It's like, I love showing the guy from Lethal Weapon 1. You guys are out there like Pluto. You guys are gone, man. Yeah, Joshua. Yeah, talk to Joshua. You guys are gone, man. You guys are out there. Yeah, the reality is gone. The reality is out there. I don't know how this is arranged, how their history books reflect this, how inserted fake stories just make it into the record. I mean, most of you might be like me, like I never heard of this, but I'm not going to be like those Mandela effect researchers that the moment they never heard of one thing, well, if I never heard of it, it must be a Mandela effect. That's what they present. And that's ridiculous. That's arrogant and ridiculous. Greg was like, yeah, I heard something about that. We just missed it. That doesn't mean it's not an Archie and Jughead level of reality, fake story somehow inserted into history. When or how, who knows? But guys, I'm sorry. The Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities, if you go through them all, approaches like 1 in 100 billion chance, if not much, much worse or more. So you add something like this on top of that, because it's the Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicities. Then this is, if I were to research this hour after hour, I guarantee you the way the reality works, the way the reality does business, I would find another Kennedy linkage to this somehow. I don't know how. You know, maybe you could find a Kennedy or an Onassis that was named Junius Brutus. I don't know, but that's just the fractal reality and its ridiculous nature. It's how it does business. I found this within 5 minutes just because I knew to look for it. I said, there's going to be some other bizarre thing. And it, we'll keep looking around and probably something else will pop up. But I wanted to start the video as soon as I saw this connection. Here's some more bull, but I have to read the account from Robert Todd Lincoln. The 1909 account was the last time he addressed what happened between him and the elder Booth. So let me read this, and then I'll go on to what I think is complete nonsense. So he says, in 1909, the original count, or what happened, is essentially correct, but not accurate in details. The incident occurred while a group of passengers were late at night purchasing their sleeping car places from the conductor, who stood on the station platform at the entrance of the car. The platform was about the height of the car floor, and there was, of course, a narrow space between the platform and the car body. There was some crowding. I happened to be pressed by it against a car body while waiting my turn. In this situation, the train began to move, and by the motion, I was twisted off my feet and had dropped somewhat with feet downward into the open space, and was personally helpless when my coat collar was vigorously seized, and I was quickly pulled up and out to a secure footing on the platform. This is the part here that I want you to focus on, please. Upon turning to thank my rescuer, I saw it was Edwin Booth, whose face was, of course, well known to me, and I expressed my gratitude to him, and in doing so called him by name. Hey, thanks, Edwin. You're Edwin Booth. Oh, you must be Robert Todd Lincoln. Well, he didn't recognize Lincoln back, even though, of course, Abraham Lincoln was the president at this point. Oh, he said, Thanks, Edwin. Oh, anytime. Oh, and if anybody's going, well, what's the problem? He recognized, Matt, you did say he was one of the most famous actors in the United States. There's a problem, okay? There's a problem with this. So the problem is, let's just go over here. This is what I know some of you can't see this, but most newspapers, at the very best, you're not going to have inserted photographs into newspapers in the 1860s. The very best, you're going to have a sketch that's pretty good, like this one. Most of the time, this is an account inside of a newspaper of the Gettysburg Address. Let's see if this is a little bit better. Yeah, most of the time, you're going to have something like this: sketches, drawings. The only possibility is if this Lincoln's son saw many sketches, many in newspapers of this Edwin Booth, and sat in the front row several times or whatever his plays, of which I admit there's a chance. But guys, it's not like how familiar you are with Leonardo DiCaprio's face because of watching it in high definition, the movies, seeing him on TV in perfect 1080i, seeing him in People magazine with perfect clarity. I mean, even if that happened, are you going to recognize within a second that it's Leonardo DiCaprio pulling you from the train? And, thanks, Leonardo. How are the basketball diaries going and your escapades in the men's bathroom? I mean, he wouldn't know. There's no way even if he sat in the front row a few times when Edwin was performing afar, that he's going to recognize Edwin Booth. And if reality wants to tell me that they were great friends or something like that, then that just even puts the Booths closer to Lincoln's, and I don't buy that. So there's just no way, okay? There's no way this account, and I'll show you another clip of something coming up. Upon turning to thank my rescuer, again, he dropped down in a panic into train tracks. His life apparently was in jeopardy. Pulled out by the collar. I saw it was Edwin Booth, whose face was, of course, well known to me, and I expressed my gratitude to him, and in doing so called him by name. Thanks, Edwin. Bullcrap. Absolute bullcrap. Again, all he's ever seen is like little pencil sketches in the newspaper. Maybe he saw him at the theater once or twice. Come on. Again, is this Edwin Booth? It looks like De Niro. Is this De Niro in Godfather 2? I'm telling you that it's the same guy. If De Niro pulled me from a train, okay, I've seen him in 1,000 things. Within 10 seconds, I'm going to know it's Robert De Niro. But he wouldn't pull me from a train tracks. He'd kick me down into the train tracks, would probably stomp on my fingers as I probably tried to climb up, a minion of the system that he is. But I'd be like, after like 8 or 10 seconds, I'd be like, are you Robert De Niro? So this is just total bullshit. I found this. Anybody surprised? Me neither. Fate brought Lincoln and Booth together in a train station in Jersey City, New Jersey, in the midst of the Civil War. At the time, Robert was on a holiday from Harvard, traveling from New York to Washington, D.C., while Booth was on his way to Richmond, Virginia, with his friend John T. Ford, owner of the Ford's Theater in Washington. The exact date of the encounter is unknown, although Robert consistently recalled having it occurred in 1863 or 1864. Doesn't even know the year? Okay, so he could have been traveling with anybody, right? Now, Matt, come on. I mean, he was a famous actor. We know that John Wilkes Booth appeared at the Ford Theater. He certainly probably appeared there many times. Okay, I hear you. I got it. But, of all the people he could be traveling with, he's traveling with John Ford, the owner of the Ford's Theater. Another direct connection to the Lincoln Two Asses in a Nation, Really? Could have been traveled anybody. His girlfriend, his boyfriend that was a girlfriend, anybody, but he's traveling with the owner of the Ford's Theater. A direct connection. No, it's a direct example of how a ridiculous fractal reality, I want to say does business, but at least you could say presents its ridiculous history. You want the Kennedy to Lincoln synchronicity tie-in? Here it is. Robert Todd Lincoln was the ambassador. Abraham Lincoln's son was the ambassador to the UK, which is called the Court of St. James. Okay? Robert Todd Lincoln, ambassador to the UK. It's called the Court of St. James. Kennedy's father, look at Kennedy's father, Joseph Kennedy, was the ambassador to the UK at the Court of St. James. Okay, there you go. There's your Kennedy to Lincoln tie-in into this story. Anybody surprised? Me neither. And now that we have 50 of them, the chances are 1 in about 150 billion, if not much, much, quote, worse, that all of those 50, and I'm not saying, guys, of course I'm not saying the history presented is real and all those 50 coincidences occurred and reality shaped it. I'm saying somehow the backstory is laid down in a fake way. Remember, let's do our fake as. I wish I could read your fake as list right now. I'd be inserting some of them. I don't know how it's able to do this, but I assure you there's no group of people that order Italian hoagies and sit on the pot in secret societies that are able to accomplish this. Okay? Matt, you keep saying the world isn't real. We got it. Oh, well, okay, you got it. That's great. I don't know who's coming in here who just found the channel a week ago. I'm going to keep saying it because this is one of the most important realizations in understanding how ridiculous the screen is and how much you should withdraw from it and worry about yourself, understand yourself. And I always get a lecture. Well, I always get a lecture. So let me address, Matt, aren't you doing a screen exercise now? I take 2 steps forward. I have to always take a step back and examine the ridiculous, absurd clown show, fake revisionist history that I don't know how they pull this off, how the reality itself pulls this off. I don't know. I have to return here. This is fine. This is a high school class or it's a junior year class in college. If you're ready to graduate, graduate. I will always return to the screen. And then I will, every 2, 3, or 4 weeks, make a summary presentation as to how I believe the reality works. But every time I do this, I get a lecture from somebody. Like every time I make a video, I'm just supposed to present my half page. You know, I'm going to make a video every other day saying the exact same half page understanding we've come to. Not everybody's going to buy the half page. They need exercises like this. Plus, it's fun. It's fun as heck to laugh at this bullshit. Over to this website, Robert Todd Lincoln here, Edwin Booth here. And this picture I still see Robert De Niro a bit in there. If you can't see it or you're on a phone, trust me, but it's more of an aged, if that's even a word, Robert De Niro, not from Godfather 2, but like from The Score, where he stole the scepter with Edward Norton Jr. I still see Robert De Niro, but let's see what this says. This is the incident. This is what I read before. Another website's covering it, where he recognized Edwin Booth, expressed my gratitude to him, and in doing so, called him by name. And then it says underneath, is it possible that this act helped give Edwin Booth some comfort in the days and years that followed his brother's assassination of Abraham Lincoln? So did saving Robert Kennedy, I'm already doing the synchronicities. Did saving Robert Lincoln give Edwin Booth some comfort? Because he would have felt so bad, I'm sure, about his hyper-radicalized anarchist brother and what his brothers did to Lincoln, that the act of saving Robert would have consoled in some way Edwin Booth in the trying and tumultuous, what word's that? Years that, whatever, don't waste a comma, that followed in his brother's assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Source, page 70, Robert Todd Lincoln. the book, Robert Todd Lincoln, A Man in His Own Right by John S. Goff. Of course he's a man in his own right, just because he happened to be in the shadow of one of the most famous people to ever live, if he actually existed. Of course he lived in the shadow of a man like that, but of course he's a man in his own right. So that from The Patriot, he says, "I'd like to call on Anne." Of course you call yourself a man. Of course Robert Lincoln's a man in his own right. He don't need no book just because what if you were born the son of George Clooney or something? You're just an ugly little person. You couldn't even get a date, but your father was George Clooney. That'd be tough, but you'd still be a man in your own right. What is this bullshit? Okay, guys, this is probably too small to read, but don't bother. I'll read it to you. Do you remember in Tommy Boy when Richard says, I don't know when he did this, but he looks at Tommy and says, "Tommy, you have derailed." The reality, I'm speaking right now to the reality that's probably listening to me in real time. It won't just be listening after this makes YouTube. Reality, you have derailed. You lost it completely. You're like the guy that says, yeah, Joshua, you're gone, man, out there like Pluto. I'm talking the reality itself. Look at this. Bonus strange facts. I found this. I thought, I was like, I was so proud of myself for finding the Brutus connection. And, then this pops up that they're acknowledging it was meant to be that way. Well, let's just take it one at a time. Bonus strange facts. Trains were a prevalent mode of travel. No kidding. Yet it is ironic that Robert Lincoln, 1, was saved from falling off a train platform. We know that. 2, was eyewitness to the shooting of President James Garfield at a train station. Robert Lincoln was an eyewitness to the shooting of President James Garfield at a train station. Sure. Well, that's 1 in 100 million right there by itself. Had just stepped off the train when learning of the news that President William McKinley was shot. So somehow history knows that Robert Lincoln had just stepped off a train when learning the news that President William McKinley was shot. That's another Kennedy tie-in. It's a tie-in through your host of this channel, but in no way intentional. That's another Kennedy tie-in, because with Kennedy, it's like, do you remember? Anybody over 55 has heard this a million times. Not that you remember where you were, but the old generation, the boomers. Do you remember where you were? Everybody remembers where they were when they heard Kennedy. Everybody remembers where they were. Our generation was everybody remembers where they were for the 9 + 1 + 1, 7/11. So he remembers, they're tying in Kennedy. History records that he remembers exactly where he was when he learned the news, not that his father was shot, when President William McKinley was shot. What? Why would he even care about that? And then Lincoln's son, Robert, number 4, was the president of Pullman Palace Car Company, train car company. Yeah, sure. I mean, reality, you're listening to me in real time. I know it. You're not going to wait till I load to YouTube. You have derailed, my friend. This is ridiculous. And Uncanny Deduction would be so proud of me, but I knew as I looked into this, the ridiculous nature would magnify, like the Richter scale magnifies by 10 as you go up. And that's what's happening here. And I even looked at it that long. John Bobbitt might come into this if I keep looking at it. The next link or bullet point, assassin. The father of the Booth brothers, that sounds like a WWE tag team. The father of the Booth brothers was named Junius Brutus, after legendary Roman statesman Marcus Junius Brutus, one of the assassinations of Julius Caesar. Okay, I found that, and I was all proud of myself for finding that. But here, history records that it wasn't just a coincidence. The father was named specifically. History knows he was named after Junius Brutus, and so the history is making a point of reflecting that through the sentient dark force of the World Wide Web, whatever it is. Romance, check it out. Oh, it gets worse. It couldn't possibly get worse. Oh, it gets worse. Sit down, smoke 'em if you got 'em. Romance. A newspaper account suggested that a romantic rivalry between Robert Lincoln and John Wilkes Booth for the same woman. No wonder he did what he did to his father. They were after the same woman. Guys, I don't know what I don't know the credibility of this website, but I don't think it matters anymore, the credibility. Reality itself weaves this shit. I don't know how to describe it. They were both apparently after Lucy Hale, or Lucifer Hale, was a motive for the assassination. Now, anybody ever hear that before? They was after the same girl? Has anybody ever heard that before as a possible motive for the I thought it was up here. It says it right here. He said he yelled "Sic semper tyrannis." He yelled in Latin as he shot Lincoln. Thus always to tyrants. Get that sort of thing. The South is avenged, he says. Like, that doesn't read like some sort of a bad script. It takes place in a theater. It's supposed to be all real, of course. And who would possibly question history? But it doesn't read like a script at all. After Booth enters box 7 and he shoots the president, the most famous man in the world who just did the Emancipation Proclamation, blah, 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 and he yells, "Sic semper tyrannis, thus always to tyrants the South is avenged." I know he didn't translate after the Latin, but that sounds a little bit like a bad script, doesn't it? Yeah, but then it gets worse because down here it says they was after the same girl, Lucy Hale. It was a motive, it says here, for the assassination. Robert denied knowing her. A photo of Hale, daughter of Senator John Parker Hale, was found in Booth's diary. What? A sticky photo of Hale was found stuck together in pages in Booth's diary. Both also attended President Lincoln's second inauguration. What? Booth also attended Lincoln's second inauguration as a guest of Hale. More connections. Let's end this video by going up here. And I guarantee you, if I kept diving into this, more and more bullcrap would just, like the rabbits would just keep jumping up on my lap as it likes to do. And the more we've been threatening to stop chasing it, and I only chase it to make a point, and it just jumps up into my lap and asks to be hunted. But check this out. After the Two Asses in a Nation, Edwin, the more famous actor, the elder Booth, fell into a paralyzing depression when he learned that it was President Lincoln's son, who he had once saved from certain death. He found some solace. Eventually, he returned to the stage, where he played Shakespeare's tragic hero, Hamlet. Now, I'm going to struggle to put any pieces together. I don't on that, but I can just sniff it out. I guarantee if somebody's expert in this area, they can find more ridiculous reality connections. Okay, Hamlet. To be or not to be, father. Okay, Hamlet's father killed off. Something's rotten in the state of Denmark. Opening scene with the ghost. Hamlet's father killed off. Robert Lincoln's father killed off. Then Hamlet is seen as half crazy through most of it. Although in this case, it's Mary Lincoln is portrayed as completely having lost her mind and being crazy for years and years. Hamlet is portrayed as being a little bit off. What else do we have? We have the mother then stepping in to marry the mother married the new king who killed Hamlet's father, but in this case, the reality won't go that far. The reality will not have Mary Lincoln stepping in to marry Andrew Johnson, the once vice president, now president of the United States. If Mary Lincoln married Andrew Johnson, of course, it was another Johnson. That was what was his name? John. So you get confused. There's so many different synchronicities and connections. Your mind can't comprehend it. Not Robert Kennedy. See how confusing it gets? John F. Kennedy his vice president was Lyndon Johnson. So you had a Johnson was Lyndon Johnson. So you had a Johnson taking over in that synchronicity for Kennedy, and you have Andrew Johnson taking over here for this synchronicity, Johnson to Johnson, both representative of the name of a penis. If you looked hard enough, I guarantee there'd be a connection there too. Maybe both men were endowed. Those things we would never know. Did not appear in John Bobbitt movies. So, but there's probably realities probably make a ridiculous connection there too, but we can only speculate. So if Mary Lincoln went off to marry Andrew Johnson, you would have the exact same situation as Hamlet playing out, but it didn't play out because the reality itself says, look, we're going to present the absurd, but it's only going to be up to a certain point, only where this like 1/1% can see the absurd. And then what's funny, the reality laughs all the way to the reality bank. They say, these guys that are going to notice the absurdity, and it's an intentional absurdity, they're going to be made fun of by the people around them. They're going to be made fun of by friends, family, and neighbors, and these are the only ones noticing my reality tricks. Ended here. I'm just having fun with this, guys. As I was thinking, how far will the reality go? How far can we take it? And now it's definitely crossed in to the realm of the absurd, but there's a few of you who are going to go, hey, you never know. That's kind of how we never go far enough. That's kind of how it does business. So you have who replaced Lincoln? And again, Lincoln, one of the most tragic things that ever happened in American history, of course, according to the history books. Johnson, who replaced Kennedy, one of the most tragic things that happened in American history. That's another synchronicity. I'll make it number 51. Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson, the baby shampoo. What's the slogan? No more tears. Johnson & Johnson is the name of the company. Johnson, Andrew Johnson, Lyndon Johnson replaced the biggest tragedy in American history with the most tears, Kennedy assassination. The biggest tragedy in American history with the most tears. The two events that produced the most tears in American history. Johnson replaced both. You get Johnson & Johnson, then you get a slogan for a goddamn shampoo that says no more tears. Now, do I think it's going that far? No, I'm not going to go that far. But a few of you, I can hear you saying it's capable of anything. And we don't go far enough. Oh boy. Thanks for listening, guys. Be back soon.